The stench of blood, sweat, and rust filled the cramped auction hall at the edge of the galaxy. Alara tried not to gag as she stood on the raised platform, heavy chains binding her thin wrists. Around her, aliens of various species pushed and shoved, their eyes hungry as they examined the merchandise. Some were tall with razor-sharp teeth, others sported multiple limbs or horns, but all shared the same predatory gaze. Alara kept her expression neutral despite the fear coursing through her veins. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. Don't panic, Alara. Panic makes you lose control, and control is all we have sometimes. The auctioneer, a reptilian creature with mottled green skin, yanked on her chains, making her stumble forward. Lot 47. Human female. Young, but strong enough for basic labor. The auctioneer's voice grated like metal scraping metal. Humans are rare these days. Start the bidding at 5,000 credits. The crowd rumbled with laughter. A four-armed alien in the front row snorted, his multiple nostrils flaring. 5,000 for a human? They're too fragile to work the mines, too stupid to perform technical tasks. He turned to his companion, a hulking figure with curved horns. Were they good for except dying quickly? The horned alien chuckled, the sound like stones being crushed. Maybe decoration? Until they start stinking, that is. Alara's cheeks burned with humiliation. She'd been captured 3 weeks ago when slavers raided the settlement where she'd been staying. The slavers had killed most of the adults who resisted and taken the children. Since then, she'd been transported from ship to ship, finally ending up at this slave auction on some forgotten moon at the galaxy's outer rim. Look at those pathetic limbs, another voice called out. A thin alien with serrated teeth pointed at her arms. Can barely lift a tool with those. Human trash, someone else shouted from the back. Not worth feeding. The auctioneer hissed in frustration. Come now. Surely human specimens have some value to someone? 4,000 credits? 3,000. Alara couldn't take it anymore. I'm not worthless, she said, her voice stronger than she expected. The crowd fell silent for a moment, then erupted in raucous laughter. It speaks, the four-armed alien hooted, and thinks it has value. Let me buy it just for the comedy, another called out. Rage boiled within Alara. She lifted her chin defiantly. My name is Alara Gray, daughter of Captain Rena Gray of the Starwolf, and she will come for me. The laughter died instantly. The name Rena Gray rippled through the crowd like an electric current. Some aliens stepped back. Others suddenly found the exit very interesting. The four-armed alien, who had been so vocal in his mockery, paled to a sickly blue. The Rena Gray, he whispered to his horned friend. The pirate queen who destroyed the Zerar fleet? The human butcher who survived the firegates? Another murmured. Alara felt a surge of fierce pride at their reactions. Her mother's reputation as a feared pirate captain was legendary across the galaxy. For years, Rena Gray had been the terror of slaver ships and corporate convoys alike. She showed no mercy to those who dealt in flesh. The auctioneer, sensing the change in atmosphere, quickly tried to capitalize on it. Indeed, a fine specimen with interesting connections. Bidding starts at 10,000 credits. Now the crowd's murmurs took on a different tone. Some were backing away, wanting nothing to do with anything connected to Rena Gray. Others saw opportunity, a chance for ransom, leverage, or worse. 15,000, called a new voice from the back. The crowd parted to reveal a lean, reptilian humanoid with cybernetic enhancements gleaming along his left side. Alara recognized the insignia on his shoulder, the skull with 3 eyes, the mark of the Tsar Syndicate, one of the most notorious slaver organizations in the quadrant. 20,000, he continued without waiting for other bids, his voice silencing the room. My name is Dren, and the Tsar Syndicate would very much like to become acquainted with the offspring of the infamous Rena Gray. No one dared outbid him. The auctioneer, looking both relieved and frightened, quickly slammed down his electro gavel. Sold to Representative Dren of the Tsar Syndicate. As Dren's henchmen came to claim her, Alara suppressed a shudder. She had played her only card, her mother's fearsome reputation. But now she wondered if revealing her identity had been a terrible mistake. Would her mother really come for her? Did Rena Gray even know she was missing? Alara hadn't seen her mother in nearly 2 years, not since she'd been left at the settlement for her safety. Dren approached her, yellow eyes gleaming with malice and calculation. You've just become the most valuable package I've ever acquired, little human. Let's hope for your sake that your mother is as formidable as the stories claim. Alara kept her face expressionless as they led her away, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Whether her mother would come or not, she had bought herself time. And time, as Rena always said, was often the most valuable currency in the galaxy. 2 heavily armed guards escorted Alara through a series of grimy corridors aboard Dren's slave transport ship. The stale air reeked of industrial lubricant and unwashed bodies. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting sinister shadows across the metal walls. They stopped before a small door at the end of a narrow hallway. One guard punched a code into the panel, and the door slid open with a protesting screech. Without ceremony, they shoved Alara inside, removing her chains only as the door slammed shut behind her. The cell was barely large enough for her to lie down. A thin, stained mattress covered half the floor. A waste reclamation unit occupied one corner, and a tiny air vent near the ceiling provided the only circulation. The walls were scratched with countless markings, perhaps tallies or messages from previous occupants. Alara rubbed her raw wrists and took stock of her situation. The cell had no windows, and the door appeared to be solid metal, with no visible hinges or weaknesses from the inside. She was trapped, but at least she was alive. Hours passed before the door hissed open again. Dren stepped inside, flanked by his guards. In a confined space, his height forced him to hunch slightly, making him look even more predatory. "Comfortable?" he asked, his lipless mouth curving into what might have been a smile. "Quite," Alara replied, keeping her voice steady. Dren laughed, a dry sound like cracking bones. "Brave. Like mother, like daughter, perhaps." He studied her for a moment. "Do you know why I paid so much for you? To ransom me back to my mother. That's one option." Dren began to pace the tiny space available. "Though I wonder if your mother would actually pay. Pirates aren't known for their sentimentality." Alara remained silent, unwilling to show uncertainty. "Another option would be to sell you to the Outer Rim mining corporations. They're always looking for new labor, and humans, while physically weak, are surprisingly adaptable." Dren paused. "Or perhaps the Krell Research Division. They have a particular interest in human physiology these days." Each option sounded worse than the last. Alara fought to keep her expression neutral. "Of course," Dren continued, "there's also the matter of your mother's many enemies. The bounty on her head has reached impressive heights. Information on how to capture her might be worth more than you are." "You think I'd betray my own mother?" Alara asked incredulously. Dren shrugged his asymmetrical shoulders. "Everyone breaks eventually." His cybernetic eye whirred as it focused on her. "Though I admit, killing you would be risky. If Rena Gray still lives, and if she still cares about her offspring, I might find myself the target of her considerable reputation." "You don't think she's alive?" Alara couldn't help asking. "The famous Captain Gray hasn't been seen in nearly a year. Many believe she finally met her end at the Battle of Quar Nebula." Dren tilted his head. "But you didn't know that, did you? How interesting." Before Alara could respond, a beep sounded from Dren's wrist communicator. He glanced at it irritably. "Duty calls. Consider your options, little human. Cooperation could make your life considerably more comfortable." With that, he turned and left, the door sealing shut behind him. Alara released a shaky breath. If Dren was telling the truth about her mother's disappearance, her situation was even more dire than she'd thought. She curled up on the thin mattress, hugging her knees to her chest. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't despair. Her mother had taught her better than that. Several hours later, as Alara drifted in and out of an uneasy sleep, a soft tapping sound caught her attention. It came from the wall near the floor vent. She froze, listening. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. Cautiously, she moved closer to the vent. "Hello," a whispered voice came through. New prisoner? Human. Alara hesitated before responding. Yes. Who are you? Name's Bix, the voice replied. Been stuck on this rust bucket for 3 cycles. Heard you arrived with quite the commotion. You could say that, Alara whispered back. They say you're Rena Gray's kid. That true? Again, Alara hesitated. Could this be a trap set by Dren? Eventually, she decided truth was her best option. Yes, I'm her daughter. A soft whistle came through the vent. Stars and void. Never thought I'd meet someone connected to the Star Wolf legend herself. There was a pause. Is she coming for you? Because if she is, I want it on that escape plan. I don't know, Alara admitted, the words painful to say aloud. I haven't seen her in almost 2 years. Disappointment colored the single syllable. Well, half a plan is better than none. I'm pretty good with electronics, you know. Been working on a little project that might help us both. What kind of project? Alara asked, hope flickering to life. Let's just say the guards aren't as careful as they should be with their equipment, Bix replied, amusement in his voice. 2 more days, and I should have something useful. Think you can stay out of trouble until then. For the first time since her capture, Alara felt a genuine smile touch her lips. I'll do my best. Good. We'll talk more later. Guard patrol coming up in about 30 seconds. True to Bix's word, heavy footsteps soon passed by Alara's cell. She quickly moved back to her mattress, pretending to sleep. When the footsteps faded, she returned to the vent. Bix, she whispered, but received no response. Her mysterious ally had gone silent. Alone again, Alara tried to organize her thoughts. She needed to learn more about the ship, its layout, the guard rotations, potential escape routes. And she needed to prepare herself for whatever came next, whether it was rescue, escape, or something worse. As she laid back on the thin mattress, memories of her mother flooded her mind. Rena Gray had been a complex figure in Alara's life, fierce, loving, often absent. Stories of her exploits were legendary. How she'd single-handedly destroyed the Zirar fleet by luring them into a collapsing nebula. How she'd navigated the burning fire gates when no other ship had survived the attempt. How she'd freed thousands of slaves from the mining colonies of Taratus Prime. You have my blood, Alara, her mother had told her once. Never forget what that means. Grays don't break. We don't surrender. And we never, ever leave our own behind. But a year of silence was a long time, even for someone as resourceful as Rena Gray. Alara pulled a small metal disc from her boot, her mother's insignia, the wolf's head that had become synonymous with freedom for the oppressed and terror for slavers across the galaxy. She'd managed to keep it hidden through her capture and auction. Where are you, Mom? She whispered to the darkness. I need you now. Over the next day, Alara learned more about her situation through brief conversations with Bix. Her neighbor was a Sethian, a gray-skinned humanoid species known for their technical aptitude and wanderlust. He'd been captured while salvaging parts from what he thought was an abandoned vessel, only to discover it was a Zar syndicate trap. Guard rotations are every 4 hours, Bix informed her during one of their whispered exchanges. The night shift is sloppier, especially the 3rd rotation. That's when we'll make our move. What exactly is your plan? Alara asked. I've been piecing together a jammer from parts I've scavenged. It should disable the electronic locks on our cells, at least temporarily. Pride colored his hushed voice. After that, we need to get to the auxiliary bridge on level 3. From there, I can access the escape pod systems. How do you know so much about this ship? 3 cycles gives you a lot of time to observe and listen, Bix replied. And Zargoons love to brag when they think no one important is listening. Their planning sessions were interrupted when Dren returned to Alara's cell the following day. This time, he brought food, actual food, not the nutrient paste she'd been given before. I trust you've had time to consider your position, he said as he placed the tray before her. Alara eyed the food suspiciously but couldn't deny her hunger. I have, and I still have nothing to tell you about my mother that would be useful. She took a small bite of what appeared to be synthetic protein. It was better than the paste. Dren sighed dramatically. Unfortunate. We're approaching our rendezvous point. I'll need to make a decision about your fate soon. Alara's heart raced. Time was running out. Rendezvous point. Yes. We're meeting the main fleet in approximately 26 hours. My superior, Darkly, will be quite interested in meeting you. Drin's expression turned predatory. He has creative methods for extracting information. Fear knotted in Alara's stomach, but she refused to show it. If my mother is dead as you claim, what information could I possibly provide? Your mother had many allies, many resources. The location of her base, her weapons caches, her financial accounts. These would all be valuable. Drin leaned closer. And if she is alive, imagine the trap we could set using you as bait. A soft alarm chimed from his wrist. Drin checked it and smiled. We're ahead of schedule. It seems you'll be meeting Darkly sooner than expected. Enjoy your meal, little human. It might be your last pleasant experience for quite some time. As Drin left, Alara's mind raced. She needed to warn Bix that their timeline had just been drastically shortened. As soon as she was certain Drin was gone, she hurried to the vent. Bix, she hissed urgently. Bix, can you hear me? I'm here, came the immediate reply. What's wrong? We're out of time. We're meeting the main fleet in less than a day. A string of alien curses flowed through the vent. My jammer's not ready. I need more time. We don't have more time, Alara insisted. It's now or never. Silence stretched between them for several long moments. Finally, Bix spoke. Third rotation begins in 4 hours. The jammer might work, might not. Either way, it's our only chance. I'll be ready, Alara promised. As she waited for their designated escape time, Alara went through everything she knew about survival and escape, lessons her mother had drilled into her since childhood. Check the exits. Know your opponent's weaknesses. Use the environment to your advantage. And most importantly, never panic. The ship's lighting dimmed to simulate night cycle. Alara had carefully saved portions of her food, knowing she might need the energy later. She hid them in her clothing along with her mother's insignia. Now, she lay on her mattress, eyes closed but fully alert, counting the minutes until their attempt. Finally, she heard the soft electronic whine that signaled the changing of the guard. 2 sets of heavy footsteps passed her cell, the departing second rotation and the arriving third. She waited until the footsteps faded before moving to the vent. Bix, she whispered. Stand back from your door, came the immediate reply. I'm activating the jammer. Now. A high-pitched whine, just at the edge of human hearing, made Alara wince. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, her cell door slid open a few centimeters. Heart pounding, Alara pushed the door fully open and peered into the dimly lit corridor. Empty. She slipped out and quickly located Bix's cell 2 doors down. His door had also opened, and a slender gray figure emerged. Bix was taller than she'd imagined, with mottled gray skin and large, multifaceted eyes that gleamed in the low light. He clutched a small device made of what looked like scavenged circuitry and power cells. Alara Gray, he whispered, extending a 6-fingered hand. An honor, despite the circumstances. Likewise, she replied, shaking his hand. Which way? Bix pointed down the corridor. Service ladder at the end. Up 2 levels, then across to the auxiliary bridge. They moved silently through the dimly lit halls, freezing at every distant sound. The ship hummed around them, its industrial systems providing cover for their soft footsteps. At the end of the corridor, they found the service ladder Bix had mentioned, a narrow shaft used for maintenance access. Ladies first, Bix quipped as he kept watch. Alara climbed quickly, the metal rungs cold beneath her palms. 2 levels up, she found another narrow corridor. Bix emerged behind her, his breathing slightly labored. Left at the junction, he whispered, then 3rd door on the right. They had just reached the junction when a door slid open further down the main corridor. Both froze, pressing themselves against the wall. A guard emerged, yawning widely, his back to them as he headed in the opposite direction. Night shift, Bix breathed once the guard was out of earshot. Half asleep and counting the minutes until rotation end. They continued their careful progress toward the auxiliary bridge. Just as the 3rd door came into view, a piercing alarm shattered the silence. Red emergency lights began flashing throughout the corridor. They've discovered we're missing, Alara gasped. No, Bix said, his multifaceted eyes widening as he looked through a viewport. That's not an escape alarm. It's a proximity alert. There's another ship approaching, and fast. Alara rushed to the viewport. Outside, against the backdrop of distant stars, a sleek vessel was rapidly closing in on their position. Its hull was midnight black, absorbing rather than reflecting light, making it seem like a moving piece of the void itself. Only its running lights gave away its presence. "Is that?" Bix began. "The Star Wolf," Alara whispered, recognizing her mother's ship instantly. Hope and disbelief warred within her. She came. The ship's alarms continued to wail as they watched the Star Wolf approach. Its predatory design lived up to its name, streamlined and deadly, bristling with weapon systems that outclassed most military vessels, let alone a slaver transport. "We need to move," Bix urged, pulling Alara away from the viewport. "Your mother may have found you, but we're still in danger. Dren won't give you up without a fight." They continued toward the auxiliary bridge, but just as they reached the door, it slid open. Dren stood before them, his cybernetic eye glowing red in the emergency lighting, a high-powered energy gauntlet fitted over his right hand. "Going somewhere," he snarled, the gauntlet humming as it charged. "I should have known you'd try something foolish." Behind him, they could see the auxiliary bridge, their escape route now blocked by the very person they were trying to evade. "That's my mother's ship," Alara said, trying to buy time. "You know what she does to slavers. Surrender now, and you might survive." Dren laughed harshly. "Your mother can't help you if you're dead, little human." He raised the gauntlet, energy crackling around his fingertips. "And while you might be valuable alive, I'd rather lose that value than let Rena Gray reclaim her precious offspring." Just as Dren prepared to fire, the entire ship shuddered violently. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness save for the red emergency beacons and Dren's glowing cybernetic eye. "Direct hit to our engines," Bix whispered, steadying himself against the wall. Another impact rocked the ship, throwing all three of them off balance. Dren stumbled backwards into the auxiliary bridge. Alara and Bix exchanged a quick glance before diving in opposite directions as Dren fired his gauntlet, the energy blast scorching the wall where they had been standing. "The Star Wolf is boarding," Dren hissed into his communicator. "All available units to the main docking bay. And someone get those shields back online." While Dren was distracted, Alara grabbed a loose metal pipe dislodged by the impact and swung it with all her strength. It connected with Dren's shoulder, making him howl in pain and fury. His gauntlet discharged wildly, blasting a control panel which exploded in a shower of sparks. "You'll pay for that," he growled, advancing on her. Another violent tremor shook the ship, stronger than the previous ones. This time, they heard the unmistakable sound of hull breach alarms. "She's tearing the ship apart," Bix said, awe and terror mixing in his voice. Dren's communicator crackled with panicked voices. "They've breached the main bay. Heavy casualties in Sector 4. We need reinforcements. Hold your positions." Dren shouted into the device. "Darkly will have all your hides if—" He never finished the sentence. The auxiliary bridge door behind him burst open, and a volley of precision blaster fire struck him in the back. Dren collapsed forward, his gauntlet discharging one final time into the floor. In the doorway stood a tall figure in form-fitting combat armor, a smoking blaster in each hand. The figure stepped over Dren's prone form and removed their helmet, revealing a woman with steel-gray eyes and a face that mirrored Alara's own, though weathered by time and hardship. "Mom," Alara whispered, her voice catching. Rena Gray holstered one blaster and extended her free arm. "Alara." They crashed together in a fierce embrace. Rena is still keeping her second blaster trained on Dren's motionless form. After a moment, she held Alara at arm's length, eyes scanning for injuries. "Are you hurt?" she demanded. "No, I'm okay," Alara assured her, tears threatening to spill. "But how did you find me?" A tight smile crossed Rena's face. "I never lost you. The settlement had trackers. I just couldn't extract you safely until now." Her gaze shifted to Bix. "Who's your friend?" Bix, Alara explained quickly. He helped me escape. He's coming with us. Rena nodded once. Anyone who helps my daughter is welcome aboard the Starwolf. She tapped her communicator. Vex, I've got Alara and one friendly. Secure the route back to the main bay. Already on it, Captain, a voice replied. Better hurry, though. Their reinforcements are organizing in the cargo hold. Rena's expression hardened. Let's move. As they prepared to leave, a groan from the floor caught their attention. Dren was still alive, though badly wounded from Rena's attack. You're too late, he gasped, blood trickling from his mouth. Darkly knows about her now. He'll never stop hunting both of you. Rena aimed her blaster at his head. Send him my regards in whatever hell you're heading to. Before she could fire, another impact rocked the ship. Captain, Vex's urgent voice came through the communicator. Threes are cruisers just dropped out of hyperspace. We need to extract now. Rena hesitated, then lowered her weapon. You're not worth the time it would take to kill you, she told Dren coldly. But if you or your boss come after my daughter again, there won't be enough of you left to identify. With that, she turned away, gesturing for Alara and Bix to follow. As they raced through the corridors toward the main docking bay, they encountered evidence of the Starwolf crew's efficiency. Neutralized guards, freed slaves hurrying toward escape, precisely placed explosive charges set to disable the ship's critical systems. The main bay was a scene of controlled chaos. The Starwolf had forced a docking connection and crew members in. Combat gear were efficiently loading freed prisoners while maintaining a defensive perimeter. Several bodies in Zar Syndicate uniforms lay motionless on the floor. Captain on deck, someone shouted as Rena entered with Alara and Bix. A tall, muscular woman with vivid purple skin approached them. All primary objectives complete, Captain. 23 slaves freed, minimal casualties on our side. Good work, Vex, Rena replied. Prepare for immediate departure. Those our cruisers will be in weapons range soon. As they hurried aboard the Starwolf, Alara couldn't help but look back at the slaver ship that had been her prison. Despite everything, she felt a stab of pity for those still aboard. Rena Gray's reputation for leaving slaver vessels as drifting tombs was well earned. The Starwolf's interior was a stark contrast to the filthy slaver ship. All clean lines and efficient design, clearly maintained with military precision. Crew members nodded respectfully to Rena as they passed, many casting curious glances at Alara. They reached the bridge, where a panoramic viewport showed the damaged slaver ship floating against the starfield. Beyond it, 3 larger vessels were rapidly approaching. Disengage docking clamps, Rena ordered as she took the captain's chair. Helm, prepare to execute evasive pattern Tau. Weapons, target the slavers' engines, but don't destroy them. I want them stranded, not vaporized. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, and within moments, the Starwolf had detached from the slaver ship and was backing away. Fighters launching from the lead cruiser reported a crewman monitoring the tactical display. Let them come, Rena said calmly. Spring the trap. On her command, several small objects detached from the Starwolf's hull, mines that had been magnetized to their own ship, now drifting into the path of the oncoming fighters. Fire, Rena ordered. The Starwolf's weapons systems locked onto the floating mines and detonated them just as the Zar fighters entered their midst. The resulting explosion created a chaotic debris field that scattered the fighter formation. Now, maximum burn, heading 227 Mark 84. The Starwolf leapt forward, its engines flaring brilliantly as it accelerated away from the crippled slaver ship and the approaching cruisers. A few desperate shots from the cruiser's long-range weapons fell short as the Starwolf rapidly outpaced them. They're not pursuing, Captain, Vex reported after a few tense minutes. Looks like they're stopping to assist the transport. Rena nodded and finally allowed herself to relax slightly. She turned to Alara, who had been watching the entire sequence with wide eyes. Welcome home, she said softly. Only then did Alara allow the tears she'd been holding back to fall freely. She was safe. She was with her mother. She was going home. The Starwolf's medical bay buzzed with activity as the ship's doctor and medics tended to the freed slaves. Some were malnourished. Others showed signs of abuse, but all were receiving care with an efficiency that spoke of unfortunate practice. This wasn't the first time the Starwolf crew had performed such a rescue operation. Alara sat on an examination table, watching as a medic scanned her for injuries or tracking implants. Bix occupied a nearby table, already making friends with the medical staff as he enthusiastically described their escape attempt. "You're clear," the medic informed Alara after completing the scan. "No physical injuries beyond minor bruising and no implants or trackers. You're one of the lucky ones." "Thank you," Alara replied, though lucky wasn't exactly how she described her experience. The medical bay doors slid open and Rena entered. She'd changed from her combat armor into a captain's uniform that, while practical, carried an unmistakable air of authority. The crew straightened almost imperceptibly at her presence. "How is she, Dr. Liana?" Rena asked the chief medical officer. "Physically, she's fine," Dr. Liana replied. "Some mild dehydration and malnutrition, but nothing that proper meals won't fix quickly." Rena nodded. "I need to speak with my daughter privately." The doctor took the hint and moved away to check on other patients. Rena sat beside Alara on the examination table, maintaining a professional distance despite the obvious desire to embrace her again. "The freed slaves are being taken care of," she said. "Once everyone's stable, we'll arrange transport to neutral territory where they can contact their families or seek asylum." "What about Bix?" Alara asked, glancing at her gray-skinned ally who was now gesturing animatedly to an amused medic. "He's welcome to stay aboard if he wishes. We can always use someone with technical skills." Rena hesitated, then added more softly, "And anyone who helped keep you alive has earned a place here." Alara studied her mother's face, the new lines around her eyes, the slight graying at her temples that hadn't been there 2 years ago. "Dren said you disappeared. That people thought you died at the Battle of Quora Nebula." A shadow crossed Rena's features. "Sometimes it's useful to be thought dead, especially when you're hunting something or someone dangerous." "Like Darkly?" Alara prompted. Rena's expression hardened. "You heard that name. Dren mentioned him. Said he was Dren's superior in the Tsar Syndicate." "Darkly is much more than that," Rena replied grimly. "He's the architect of a new slaving network that spans half the galaxy. More organized, more brutal than anything we've faced before." She paused. "He's the reason I left you at the settlement. I thought you'd be safer there while I tracked him down. But they found me anyway," Alara said quietly. Guilt flashed across Rena's face. "Yes, and I'm sorry for that. I never thought—" She stopped herself. "No, that's not true. I knew the risks. I just thought I could eliminate the threat before it reached you." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. 2 years of separation creating a gulf that mere hours of reunion couldn't immediately bridge. Finally, Alara reached into her pocket and withdrew the wolf's head insignia. "I kept it safe," she said, offering it to her mother. Rena looked at the insignia, but didn't take it. "It's yours. I gave it to you to remember who you are, a gray. And grays don't break," Alara finished. "We don't surrender, and we never leave our own behind." A genuine smile softened Rena's features. "You remembered." Every word, Alara confirmed. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning inside her since their reunion. "Why did you never contact me?" 2 years, Mom. Not a single message." Rena's smile faded. "Because every transmission could be traced. Because my enemies, our enemies, are always listening. Because after what happened to your father." She trailed off, pain evident in her eyes.